Here we are with Padres 360. Today we're getting together with one of the former Padres, somebody that I primarily remember as a kid because of these baseball cards here. Dave Hilton was a player for the San Diego Padres who was drafted in the first round, first player taken in 1971. And we reached out and contacted him, and he just happened to be in San Diego today. And he said, I don't want to talk to you. No, he actually said that he would be more than happy to talk to us with his lovely wife. And so fans of Major League Baseball, I'd like to introduce you to our friend Dave Hilton. Dave, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, Wayne. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and relive some old times.
Well, let's talk about growing up, because we talked earlier before the interview about Houston. You grew up in the area and everything, and followed the Colts and the Astros. When you think back, who are some of your earlier influences as far as a player, and what are your early memories of the game itself?
Well, I grew up in a small Texas town, and I played ball every day, would go out the door, and then would have an old baseball tape with black electrical tape and go out in the fields and play all day and pick teams. And we didn't have leagues. We just played baseball, neighborhood kids. Then my dad moved to Houston, and they were both teachers, my mom and dad, and so became more involved in Little League and Pony League, regular baseball leagues, and then high school, and that's where I mostly played. But I followed the game. I read books about the game in the 1900s and all the early stars, and then up until the present day. And so I just was a baseball fan and loved playing.
Okay. Who are some of the players you really grew up liking? Who did you like?
Well, I liked Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Eddie Matthews, Dick Groat, Don Hope. These were late 50s players. And just because I had their card, I didn't know them or anything, just because I had the baseball card. And the old games were Dizzy Dean and Pee Wee Reese, and there was only one game a week back then. So you'd watch the one game a week and then go out and imitate the players that you happen to see.
So 1971, you're the first player taken by the San Diego Padres, and you drive out for your very first spring training with our friend Dave Freisleben and Larry Hardy. Talk about your early memories of that very first spring training with the club.
Well, it was all new. Everything was brand new, and didn't really know what I was doing. Hadn't really traveled a lot, but I knew I wanted to play baseball. And so met all these guys there, and the reason I was able, even though I was the first pick of the draft, it was still unusual to come to a big league camp your first year, and I just kind of so badly wanted to play that I kind of made that part of the deal, was to be able to come to the big league spring training. And so it was kind of funny, back at the time, this was new, it's not new now, but Rawlings made a different color glove. It was a blue glove.
Really?
And it was brand new. No one did that, but they gave it to me. And then Randy Elliott, I don't know if you
I remember him.
Interviewed him or not, but he kept saying, "Hey, who's the kid with the blue glove?" And nobody knew me, and I looked young and everything like that. So they made a big deal about that. So anyway, but it was fun, and it was fun playing, and of course everybody was old veterans. Now it's quite different, the spring training, than it is now, but it was fun.
So you were there with Preston Gomez, right? That was your
Preston Gomez was the manager. I think Pat Corrales, Roger Craig, Don Zimmer was he was either a coach or became the manager of the next year or something. Real old school guys, and out in Yuma, the spring training was in Yuma, and they used to throw batting practice. The pitchers would throw batting practice, and like now they have these L screens. Back then they were just these low screens, and the pitcher had to duck his whole body behind the screen. And quite different in old school.
Amazing, right?
Man, yeah, because when we saw the home run derby, I mean, who was it? Was it Todd Frazier had a line drive right back
his
at
brother almost got one, yeah.
And his brother just jerked or whatever. But it's like, yeah. So half a screen, I can't even imagine
just a half a screen back then.
So now you get into the system, and you moved up pretty quickly with the Padres, and you came up in '73. I think your first game was against Atlanta.
I came up actually at the end of '72.
Okay.
We played Double-A, and they said it was a real good team because we were all young, but they didn't have a AAA team yet at that time.
Okay.
So all of us, Dave Fries-Leben and Randy Jones and Larry Hardy and Randy Elliott and John Grubb, Mike Caldwell, Bobby, you interviewed him. Bob Davis. And anyway, we were all in AA. Duke Snyder and Johnny Padres were the manager. And that was a big deal back then because these were famous Hall of Fame players. And I don't know if Duke ever managed another team, but he managed that team. And Johnny Padres was a coach.
Because I know he was really briefly, for a couple of years, I think, one of the broadcasters with the Padres really early on.
He was quite dignified and famous and had a air or carriage about him that was distinct. But anyway, so I came up at the end of '72 and got to play in September.
So now, you finally was a '73. I think you made the opening day roster for the club, and I know you 74, 75. You were with the regular club. Talk about some of the memories of the period of time you were playing with us, and what is your proudest moment as a major league player?
I think the proudest moment I probably was going to Houston and playing in front of my family in the Astrodome there, which I grew up going to games at. An old pitcher named Tom Griffith, he threw very hard. Tom Griffin, I think, back in those days was a really hard thrower and wild, though accidentally he knocked me down. He wasn't trying to knock me down, but he did twice, and on a 2-0 pitch I hit a home run to center field in the Astrodome. That was kind of fun and a good moment, you know, for me and in front of a family and friends. But basically it's kind of a blur, you know, because I was so young and things move fast, you know, and that. And had always wished, one of the regrets is I didn't do better in the big leagues than I did in AAA. I was quite good stats and good play and All-Stars and all that in AAA and didn't carry it over to the big league time. So it's kind of bittersweet because I would have wanted to do better in the big leagues than I did.
I know you continued to play. I know you moved on to Toronto, played there for a year. Talk about your transition to playing Japanese baseball.
Well, the way it worked out was Peter Babasi went over to be the GM of Toronto, and I didn't sign a contract because I didn't agree. Complicated things, but I didn't agree with the salary, but I was the opening day third baseman. But because I didn't sign a contract, Roy Hartsfield, the manager, said, Dave, you better sign or they're going to take all your stuff off the band. And I said, well, I don't believe you, and then I didn't care anyway, but they did. They took my stuff literally off the band. And so I went home for a while and called Harry Dalton, because I had done very well against the Angel teams and organization. He said, let me call you back. He called back and said, well, you're going to have to go play. If you're not going to sign, you're going to have to go play back in Toledo with them, and then you can be a free agent. So I did that, had a decent year, and won a Gold Glove, and was a free agent, and was drafted by the Rangers, White Sox, and A's. And then also I wrote to some teams in Japan and signed with him, and I ended up signing with him.
What was it like playing Japanese baseball?
It was like the big leagues. It was really like the big leagues. Very intense. They would get 50,000 people a game, whereas with the Padres we weren't quite drawing that many back in the 70s.
Still aren't.
And so everything was very intense, and it was much a big league level. And by that time I did learn how to play in the big leagues, so I was satisfied, you know, that I reached my potential at the level that I wanted to do it at in Japan. So that was a point of pride for me, at least arriving on my potential over there.
What I know you eventually became a coach. What transitioned you from player to coach? Were there anybody that really influenced you while you were still playing? Or was it something you sort of maybe fell into, or?
I more fell into it. Okay. You know, sometimes players know what they want to do afterwards, but I think most players don't know what they want. They just want to play ball. And so after the baseball was over, I went to do something else, and then a friend, Dave McKay, called and said, hey, Minnesota's looking. He's a first base coach now with the Diamondbacks. Minnesota needs a manager. You want to manage? And I said, sure, I'll do that. And so I went to Lodi, California. It was quite interesting. In Visalia, and managing. I went to spring training, and I figured I would get in there and they'd have a little meeting and tell me what you do and everything about how to manage a baseball team. Because I just gotten through playing, and I got there about 11 p.m. and George Brophy was the old personnel director. It was still old school even back in '84. This is 1984. I get in at 11 o'clock at night, and he says, go by his hotel room, and he said, Dave, here's a list of 10 players. We've got to release these guys tonight. And
oh boy!
He didn't tell me how to manage. He didn't tell me anything about that. He said, here's the guys you got to release. And I had to call them to my room and release them. The next day, the first day of managing a minor league team, well, I figured, well, now they'll tell me how to do it in the morning. He said, Dave, here's the balls and here's your bats. You're on field number 8. See you at 3 o'clock. I came back at 3 o'clock. For 30 days, it was like that. There was no organized, here's what everybody does from 9 to 10 and 10 to 11 and 11. It wasn't like that. Go out, come back. You manage your team.
So after you managed, it was about 20 years coaching and managing. So talk a little bit, because we also want to give a plug to your business as well and what you're doing now currently. So how'd that come about?
Well, in between the years of, and I had played winter ball for 10 years or something like that, and but in between, when I wasn't playing or coaching, I would start training players and coaching players. And I just thought of the name. You might have thought it up, Arizona School of Baseball.
Before the internet.
Before the internet. So I call it Arizona School of Baseball, and it's basically me doing training, private training. But then it happened to always be on the first listing on the first page of the internet. And then when people would call, they would come from Canada or out of town or New York or Germany. Actually, people from Germany found me, or somewhere else. Anyway, when they looked up baseball instruction in Arizona, I was the first one. So I kind of was able to always keep business going, and I enjoyed it. So I still do that today now, and then I started getting into the mental skills area of baseball, which was what I was lacking when I first came up to the Padres. So now I teach players how to stay focused whenever they arrive at a new environment. And that's what I do. So I have another one called Pro Advantage Sports. It's just mental instruction.
Well, that's really cool. I'm glad that you're doing that, because it's very important, I think, for you guys to teach the next generation. That's how I believe anybody learns. Now, I got to ask, because we've never had a player's wife. Never had a player's wife. Now we've talked to Melinda Fries-Leben before, but not on camera.
And Marie.
Really. And Marie, that's true. We've talked to them kind of off camera and been promised to never reveal things that were said. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we'd like to talk to Dave's wife here. I forget your name. Apologies.
Patty.
Patty?
Yeah.
Let's talk about being a player's wife at that time. Did you get to spend time with any of the players' wives during Dave's tenure? Who were you tight with, and what were some of the things that you ladies would do while these guys are out in the field busting tail?
Well, we did enjoy each other's company, but we mostly, at games is where you get to know people. You sit with different people, and you learn that when one of the pitcher's wives, if her husband was on the field, you didn't sit next to her, because she was focused and didn't want any interruptions. So I learned that real quickly. That was one of the first things I learned. But I was so young. I was 20 when I got married, and so I did not know very much about baseball other than having played softball. So I was still learning the game, and so asking lots of questions of the wives. But when the guys were on the road, sometimes we'd get together for dinner. Again, you had the wives that had children and those of us that didn't at the time, and so there was, get-togethers, but we were, the young wives with no children weren't relating as well to the kids, and so you know, mostly shopping and things like that. But what I really enjoyed was when we would all get together with the husbands and just hear them talk about baseball, and just to see that bond between the husbands, and to learn that side, their side of the game, as opposed to what we read about them, and to know that these were just people who loved baseball and cared so deeply about the game. No matter what the score was at the end of the game, you know, they loved being out there every single minute. So that's what I fell in love with, is that part of the game, is hearing the stories and knowing that these are little boys that grew up and were able to accomplish something that very few people were able to accomplish.
Living their dream.
They're living the dream, and they appreciated every moment. They were grateful to be out there. And how many people can say that about the work they do? And so for me, and it's still that way, I still love when he gets together with baseball people and they start talking. I am just in heaven, because it's always great to hear the stories. And I got to witness so many amazing. He's humble and I'm not. He's a great person, and he is well respected because he gave it 100% every time he was on the field. So that's probably my greatest memory, is watching him work so hard at what he did and accomplishing so much in his lifetime. So
that's great.
Well, I have one question to ask both of you. We'll wrap it up. And once again, I'd like to thank both of you for your time. This is a Padre fan. This is an honor and a pleasure. 'Cause, dude, I saw you as a kid. You know, and these cards, you know, it's like I lived.
And you're only 12
cards.
now, so you're not that old.
I know, I understand that. But I like you to impart your wisdom in this. What would you tell players that are coming up today as far as the game? What would be your advice to them? And as a wife, what is the advice you would give to players' wives that are coming up? So we'll start with Dave Durrell.
Well, assuming you're playing at a competitive level, high school, college, and have an ambition to continue playing, this is separate from the youth playing or playing for fun. But on that level, I would recommend play as hard as you can all the time, because you never know when you might be seen and when somebody will catch you at the right moment and evaluate you in the context of your continuing to play. And then always keep learning. You know, be open to learning a new way of doing something. Not to say you have to always change on a whim to please people, but a lot of times there is ways that you can become better. So always give it your best and continue to be open to learning.
Good deal.
Wow. Probably the one thing I learned in all the years in baseball is that the greatest role I've had is being a support for him. Win or lose, I'm still the same person, and I still love him the same. But I also know the stress and pressure of baseball, and so you can't live day to day. You have to go for the long haul.
Yes.
And you have to realize it's a career that has a lot of ups and downs, and so I just made it a point every day to say I'm in it for the long haul, and I'm going to be here at the end of your career, at the beginning of new stages, and I think they all need that. As a wife, that's really something that we can do, is you know, take care of the home fires, make sure the kids are doing good, and give them a lot of support with their work. So
sounds like great advice.
Yep. And I'd like to thank both of you for your time, and it really means a lot that you took the time out of your schedule to be able to go ahead and get together with us. Padre fans out there, I hope you appreciated the time that you were able to hear these people talk and talk to a former Major League player, hear what he has to say, as well as a wife, which is something, like I said, that we haven't had the opportunity to do. I'd like to thank you all. This is Padres 360 signing off. Peace.